Hello, and welcome to Sobercast, where we provide AA speaker meetings and workshops in podcast format. We're an ad-free podcast, and if you enjoy listening, please help us be self-supporting by visiting Sobercast.com, look for the donate link, and drop $1 or $2 into our virtual basket. We hope you enjoy the podcast. Have a great day.
Kayla R, alcoholic. All right, so there's a few things I'm supposed to say. I have a sponsor. Her name's Julie. She's back there. And she has a sponsor. My sobriety date's November 24th, 2012. My home group is Empire Way. And I think that's it. So what it was like for me. So I guess I want to say more the delusion when I first got sober. When I first came to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, I knew I had a problem with drinking, but there were certain things that I said that looking back were not true. Like, for instance, I didn't have a lot of consequences, and my drinking was never really that bad. And in working the steps and going to meetings, I remembered some things that I had, conveniently blocked out, such as... one of the consequences of my drinking was I decided it would be a good idea to climb on a roof when I was drunk and fell through said roof and broke my back. And so that was a pretty severe consequence. I should have had a lot of consequences with, I drove drunk a lot. I never got caught, but I like to drink with strangers because my friends would go home because they were grown-ups. So they would go to work, they had to go to work the next day or whatever, they had to do homework or something grown-ups did. And I would say, all right, well, I'm going to stay here, and I would make friends. I would just glob onto these people and drink with them for a while. And it usually got pretty ugly. I got myself in a lot of situations that should have been really dangerous. I remember one time in Vegas, these people pulled over in their car and said, hey, get in our car and we're going to go to this party. And I was like, okay, that sounds like fun. Just me and this other little girl. And we got in this car with these strangers. And they were nice enough people, but it could have been really bad, and I did that a handful of times. I threw up a lot, pretty much every time I drank. I threw up on people, in people's cars. Just inconvenient places. I blacked out a lot, and that was all kind of part of the fun was, hey, what happened last night, guys? Fill me in. And that seemed to be cool in my social circle or something. And people would always say, you didn't seem that drunk. I can't believe you blacked out at 11. You didn't seem like you were that crazy, but then you were throwing up and you said you couldn't remember it. And, and I was a seasoned alcoholic. So I wasn't super sloppy like some of my friends were, I was, there were more consequences. I totaled a few cars. I think right now I've totaled 4 cars. One of which was my mom's car when I was 12. So I got started early and that was because I was always just kind of like everyone talks about in here. I never felt like I was a part of, I never felt like, I fit in, and when I was in 8th grade, I went to live with my mom in Idaho, and she's probably an alcoholic, and so we got to drink together. She bought me all the booze I wanted, bought all my friends all the booze they wanted, and for the first time in my life, everyone wanted to be around me. Everyone wanted to be at my house. Everyone wanted to hang out, and I felt like I had arrived. I smoked pot with my mom the first time that year out of a Dr. Pepper can. And, and just, I was just talking to somebody about all the weird things we smoked pot out of, like apples and just whatever we could get our hands on, and it was just some of my friends just weren't as desperate like that. They weren't that desperate. It wasn't, they didn't have to do it, right? They would wait till they found a pipe or whatever, but we were going to figure it out. So we were going to carve an apple or whatever we had to do to get high, Anyway, so it was ugly, but like I said, I didn't really see that till I got sober. Because when I got sober, I guess I skipped something. I skipped just like how miserable I was when I wasn't drinking, which I'm sure a lot of you guys could relate to. So I didn't drink every day. It didn't progress like that for me. I drank on the weekends, starting Thursday, of course, and like a few at work, because I worked at one of those companies where it was really cool to drink. Like there was kegs all the time, and it was just part of the culture. It's like this big frat house. And so when I was 23, and I was just really miserable. I'd been seeing a psychiatrist for a couple years, or a psychologist, and I'd also seen a psychiatrist that had diagnosed me with all these things and said, this is what's wrong with you, that's what's wrong with you, take these pills, do this, and it didn't really seem to work. I was seeing this fancy schmancy doctor at Stanford, and they just kept trying, and I kept, I still feel like shit when I'm not drinking, and they kept trying to get me to stop smoking weed, which was just like, that's just not going to happen. Like, well, we think this may impact you, and, just have a few drinks and don't smoke weed, and, neither of those things are going to happen. Another important note is that I was in the military for the last 6 years. So for those 6 years, every single time I smoked pot was gambling, getting kicked out of the military, and going to jail. Like, you could totally go to jail for that. But I didn't care. It didn't matter. I had to get high. I had to get drunk. So I did. And I luckily never got drug tested. The one time I got drug tested, I had just been out of town for 8 days, and I got home, and my roommate had smoked all the pot, and it was late, so I just went to sleep, went to work the next day, and I passed my drug test. And so that's kind of, I got lucky. I dodged a lot of bullets. So anyway, so I'm 23. I have a good job, and I have a car, and I have my own apartment. My apartment has 3 cats in it that have started using my house as a litter box because I didn't clean their litter box. And, and I frequently would, cat pee, smell my clothes, and make sure they were okay to wear, which halfway through the day I generally figured out that they weren't okay to wear, or people would tell me. And these just, weren't things that were, red flags for me, I just didn't think it was that bad. And I just didn't think other people could smell it. I don't know why I thought that. So I smelled like pot and cat piss all the time. And anyway, so my life's kind of miserable, but I think I'm still having fun. And I met these people that I started dating this guy, and he was part of this group of people, this weird group of people. They were all really different. They talked about how they'd been to jail. They talked about all these crazy things, and they were doing all this really fun stuff, and they were just this weird group of people, but they were really cool. And so I started hanging out with them, and a handful of times we would go, I lived in California at the time, so we'd go to San Francisco for a concert or something, and they'd stop and go to an AA meeting on the way to the concert, which I was like, this is really stupid, but I'm not going to sit in the car. So I just would go in, and, I think probably after my 4th meeting or so, I was like, shit. Sorry, I know I'm not supposed to swear. I was like, I think I belong here. So in one of those meetings, I announced myself as an alcoholic, and they all kind of just looked at me like, thanks, it's about time, because meanwhile, they're watching me get drunk at the concert and take my pills, a half hour later take it. Oh, I should have mentioned that I was also a total pill addict because of my back. And my doctors gave me all the pills I wanted because of my back pain, because I fell through a freaking building. So, so I'm taking my pills all day, and I'm smoking weed all night, and I'm drinking all day, and I don't think there's a problem, and I smell like cat piss. And these people were just, they were super nice about it. They never told me they thought I was an alcoholic. They never told me they thought I should do this stuff. And but anyway, I announced myself as an alcoholic, and this lady came up to me, and she said, okay, I'm going to be your sponsor now. And she said, do you believe that you're powerless over alcohol and your life is unmanageable? And I said, no. I think I have a problem with drinking, so here's my plan. I'm going to not drink for a year, and I'm going to get my life together, and then I'm going to go back to my life before. Yeah, and everyone's like, that makes total sense, yeah. And so she was like, okay. And, my life is unmanageable. I was like, my life's not unmanageable. I have a job. I have da-da-da. My life's great. And she was like, okay, let's move on to step 2 then. Do you believe that a power greater than yourself can restore you to sanity? And I said, no, God, for me. That's not happening ever. I'm not doing the God thing. Don't bring it up again. And she said, okay, step 3. And so she asked me step 3. And I said, no, again with the God stuff. And she said, okay, well, let's get on our knees and say the third step prayer. And so we did. And I said the third step prayer with her. And I'm just like, this is so stupid, you know. But at the same time, I really like these people, and I really want to fit in with this group of people. So, like, that was the weird thing, was I wanted to fit in with them so badly that I was willing to do whatever this woman said. So then she said, okay, now go get a notebook, and I'm going to have you start on your 4-step. And so I said, okay, I'll do it tomorrow or whatever. And so I go back in, and I'm hanging out with everyone. We're at this tattoo shop where we had just had an impromptu AA meeting, because that's the kind of thing these people did. And this big, scary guy, huge guy, 6-something, I don't know, he's massive and has tattoos from head to toe, and he's like, why haven't you gotten your notebook yet? And I was like, how do you know I'm supposed to go get a notebook? And he was like, go get your notebook. So it's like midnight, so I go to a liquor store down the street, and I find a blue spiral-bound notebook, which was the color I was supposed to get. So I find this notebook, and I bring it back, and she has me writing my 4-step, and she says, call me when I finish, you know, my list or whatever. So I call her the next day, and she said, okay, now do this, and then call me when you finish it. And so I did it, and I called her, and a week later, my 4-step's done. And they said, okay, now it's time for you to go start sponsoring people and making amends. And I was like, all right. So I was doing it. And I know some of you don't do the steps that way, and that's fine, right? I'm not judging the way you're doing the steps, but anyway, that's just how it happened for me. So I did that, and meanwhile, I'm going on 12-step calls. I'm working what you guys call night watch here, which is where you get, you know, the hotlines forwarded to you. So I'm like 3 weeks sober, and I'm getting calls from drunks in the middle of the night. And I'm doing that, and I'm just doing what all these people said. And I'm getting up at 3 in the morning to go on a 12-step call, and just kind of happening. And then at 6 months sober, and about 3 months sober, I'm running out of time. So magically, I found a higher power. Anyway, so all of a sudden I was like, holy shit, I think there's a God, and I think God's taking care of me, and this is weird, and okay, moving on. And then I don't even know. I had moments, a lot of moments in that first year where my brain was telling me I wasn't an alcoholic. Alcoholics Anonymous is a cult. It was all BS. I got sucked into this group of people, and I shouldn't be there, and I'm not like them, and blah, blah, blah. At 6 months sober, my cunning, baffling alcoholism started telling me that because I had never done heroin, I couldn't be of use to the suffering alcoholic in the room, because a lot of the people that are coming into the rooms are heroin addicts. So in order to be a successful member of Alcoholics Anonymous, I had to go do heroin. So this is like a concrete thought in my head. And by the way, I'd done plenty of meth, I'd done plenty of ecstasy, I'd done plenty of other stuff, you know, that had taken me down some dark rabbit holes, but I'd never done heroin, so I couldn't relate to these people. And so I shared this at my home group meeting, and they laughed at me, and they said I was stupid, and to keep coming back. And I called my ex on the way home and said, hey, I need you to smoke me out, I need to get high. And he was like, well, you know, you were freaking crazy before. And he started like painting me this picture of just how depressed I was, how unstable, how just like unbearably crazy I was. And he said, I don't think that's a good idea. And we were together for like 9 years off and on, with me cheating on him the whole time, and just, it was a disaster. So, anyway, so I didn't go out at that point, and that happened a couple other times in different variations where like my brain was telling me I should drink. And I didn't do it. And then I got to that end of the year, and I got my chip, and then all of a sudden I had like, 16 months, and I was like, oh, my year passed. I could drink now. But I was like, holy shit, I'm an alcoholic. Sorry, I keep saying I'm an alcoholic, and somewhere in that I decided that I was definitely an alcoholic. And, and then, now today it's just like, I'm so grateful that I had that experience. And it was just full of like weird coincidences. And it was just, like how lucky I was that I got placed with that group of people that they just sucked me in, and they didn't give me another choice. And they just started telling me to do stuff. And for whatever reason, I did it, and I got to stay sober. And so that was November 24th, almost 3 years ago. And I haven't had to drink because of it. And, and I keep doing these things in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I keep sponsoring people. And I got my first sponsee in a month sober, and I have had very few breaks without any sponsees, and that's what keeps me sober. And I still I still struggle with the God thing, but I try to just do it anyway. I just pray even in periods when I think it's really stupid, and that seems to work for me. So I'm really grateful for Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you're not sponsoring people, you're totally missing Alcoholics. You're completely missing Alcoholics Anonymous if you're not sponsoring people. So please do that. And thanks for having me speak today.
Hey everyone, I'm Scott. I'm an alcoholic. Hey. I got 6.5 years of sobriety, and I do this a lot, and I'm still kind of nervous. It's just kind of odd. Every time I do this, I'm still kind of nervous. Can you all hear me okay? I thought you were Jamie, because I spoke here about 4 years ago or so, and I got a text day before yesterday, saying, hey, this is Jamie. Can you speak? Kind of short notice. Do you mind speaking tonight? I said, sure, that's fine. And I thought you were him. And I'm thinking, you're up here, thinking, here's our next speaker, Scott, and we're texting back and forth, because I'm thinking you're him. I'm like, yeah, sure, dude, I'll be there, no problem. And you're like, hey, great to have you, realizing you're probably going, I have no idea who this dude is. So anyway, I'm glad we got that figured out. So anyway, my name is Scott. I'm an alcoholic, and I'm here because I got a second chance. And what I mean by that is there's a story that everybody knows Thomas Edison invented the light bulb. And he worked a long time on perfecting the light bulb, and he went through, as we all learned in school, I don't know how many different variations of filaments before he got the right one. And he was working in his laboratory day in and day out. Finally got it perfected. And he was putting the finishing touches on it. And he gave the light bulb to an assistant, an apprentice back then. They're pretty much indentured servants back then. But an apprentice, a young boy that he took under his wing. And he went off to write his paper that he was going to present to the world. And he gave the light bulb to this young apprentice for safekeeping. And the young man tripped on a carpet and fell and broke the light bulb in a million pieces. And Thomas Edison was heartbroken. And in his assistant's notes in their journal, they said that they took that apprentice out and gave him a, quote, sound thrashing. I can relate to that. And Thomas Edison went back in the laboratory, and he worked again, day after day after day, perfecting it yet again. And he had it perfect yet again. And instead of giving it to somebody else, he called the same young man over and said, take this, because everybody gets a second chance. And that's how I feel about this program and about what led me to come to this program. Electricity figures a lot in my presentation, and I don't know why, because I'm not an electrician. I don't know anything about alternating current and direct current and volts and amps. All I know is that when I turn the switch up, the lights go on, and when I turn it down, the lights go off. That's about all I know about electricity, but it plays a big part in my story. A lot of it is, as we hear, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. And I tell that story, but I also equate it to my disconnect from everything, how I got connected to AA, and how I stay connected to this day. So that's this concept of connectivity, again with the electrical reference, kind of plays a big part. And I got that from page 152 in the big book. Talks a little bit about people that he cannot picture life without alcohol. Someday he will be unable to imagine life either with or without it. He will know loneliness such as few do. I can certainly relate to that. That's my disconnect. Later it goes on to say, we have shown how we got out from under. Am I to be consigned to a life where I shall be stupid, boring, and glum? I know I must get along without liquor, but how can I? Have you a sufficient substitute? That was my connection to this program. That was my substitute. That's me getting connected. And then it goes on to say, there you will find a release from care, boredom, and worry. Your imagination will be fired. Life will mean something at last. Your most satisfactory years of your existence lie ahead. Thus we find the fellowship, and so will you. That's how I stay connected through this fellowship. I was born in Virginia, but we moved to Southern California when I was about 6 months old, San Diego. And I am the oldest of three. I have two sisters. My middle sister is not one of us. She's a social drinker. My youngest sister is 48, and she'll be dead within a year or two of this disease, untreated. She wants nothing to do with AA, wants nothing to do with getting help. She's drinking herself to death as we speak. And I'm waiting for the phone call. I know it's going to happen, and I accept that. My family is challenging. We talk a lot, but we don't say anything. Okay? My family's very wealthy. I don't say that to brag or to boast. It's to put it in context. My family members have a lot more dollars than cents, so to speak. Right? And my family doesn't like to pry. They don't like asking questions, especially when the answers might make them uncomfortable. So I learned at a very early age to circle the wagons and not let anybody in to what I was feeling inside, because we just didn't do that in my family. To this day, we still don't. That's the way it is, and I accept that. So this disconnect started relatively early, because from the moment I can remember, I felt that everybody else got an owner's manual for life, except me. I just didn't understand how things worked. And some people say, yeah, I was afraid of my own shadow, or I felt difficult here and there. I just felt like I didn't fit anything, anywhere, at any time. And it's kind of hard to put into words. So if you can think about it, I was asked one time when I was speaking at a dinner, and somebody said, well, how did it feel when you were growing up? And I said, well, do this. If you have your fork in your right hand and you're right-handed, put it in your left hand. Switch hands while you eat your salad. So I'm right-handed, so I cut with my knife and I hold my fork in the left hand. So I told people, reverse that. How does that feel? And they said, awkward. They said, different. They said, uncomfortable. And I said, yeah, that's how I felt. I felt like everything was backwards. So this kind of continued because, again, I didn't have my family to lean on. So I just kind of stumbled through life. And I did the things that I did because I thought that's what I should do. Because I never wanted to offend anybody. I never wanted to call attention to myself. I never wanted to do anything that would set me apart from anyone else. I just wanted to stay under the radar. A lot of this happened because when I was 8 years old, something really ugly happened to me. And this is not the forum to discuss it, but it was horrible, and it was sexual, and it was really ugly. And I shut down even more. I literally closed up, and I said nothing to anyone. And that's the way it was. So I slowly started to isolate myself. I didn't go out for any sports. I didn't do anything that would get me noticed. I certainly thought I was capable of getting good grades, but I didn't want to because that meant people would notice me and call attention to me, and I wanted nothing to do with that. So I was just your regular student. I just got by, and nobody called attention to me, and that's exactly how I wanted it. So that continued, and my parents entertained quite a bit, and I just, one day, feeling like I normally did, empty and awkward and stupid and lonely and ugly and inferior in every way, I picked up a drink that was left over from a party, and I drank it, and it was vodka. That's what I started with. Ironically, that's what I ended with. But I remember how it felt, and it felt magical. It felt wonderful. It felt like nothing I had felt before. And this is about 12 and a half, 13 years old. It was amazing. And I loved it. And I knew, for some weird reason, I knew that I was going to have a problem with it because it made me feel too good. And I wanted more of it. and I wanted more of it yesterday. Didn't quite happen that way. I continued through school, again doing just the bare minimum. And I grew up in Southern California in the 80s. So there was a lot of entertainment, a lot of parties, a lot of this, a lot of that. Booze was always around. My friends' parents were a lot like my parents. They entertained a lot, had bars at the house and liquor all over the place. It was easy to get. We never had to go very far or try very hard to get it. So that's the way it continued. All the way through school. Wasn't much of a student, like I said, just kind of did the bare minimum. But when I had alcohol, man, it was like almost that Jekyll and Hyde personality they talk about in the book, because I was different. I could talk to people, and I was confident, and I wasn't ugly, and I wasn't stupid, and I could make people laugh, which would call attention to anything other than me. And that's the way it continued for a while. And I would continue to drink more and more, and I would continue to be an actor, like they say in the book. I was very much the actor, and we'd have a lot of fun and do all these different things. And then I would come home, and I would lock myself in my room, and I would listen to the Smiths, and I would drink vodka. Right? Southern California in the 80s. Right? I know this is not a music forum, but it's important to understand that I was so bone-crushingly lonely and just felt so alone, like nobody else understood, when I discovered a singer-songwriter named Morrissey. Holy smokes! And I swear like a dock worker with Tourette syndrome, so I'm really trying here. Holy smokes. Here was this person that I had never heard of, all of a sudden singing songs about how I felt. It was magical. It was. But unfortunately, it just added fuel to the fire. So I would just drink more, and I would listen to that music more, and I would feel more horrible all the time. And I'm getting even more closed, right? It was just that particular time, that particular point in my life, it played a huge part in identifying why I felt like I felt. And here was this person singing about people who felt like I felt. And for the first time, I felt like I belonged. I felt accepted, right? So I get through school, and I tried college. I had a double major, vodka and weed. And that didn't work out too well. So I got a job as a bartender. There's a cool job if you're an alcoholic, because by this time, I'm drinking all the time. And I need a job that allows me to drink. So I work in bars where not only is it okay to drink before, during, and after, it's encouraged. There was one place in West Seattle where that was the norm. So that was towards the end of my story. But the restaurant business was awesome. And through that, I got to learn about wine. And I discovered that I really liked wine. Not for the quantities that I was knocking back, but I was interested in the history of wine. So in the restaurant business, I slowly gravitated to that area where I was developing wine lists, and I was talking to winemakers, and I was picking out wines for the restaurant's wine cellar. I was asked by a couple of private individuals to stock their cellar, so I got to spend other people's money, which was pretty cool. So I got to do a lot of really cool things. And for a while, being in the wine business was really cool, and it was really glamorous, and it was really first class, because I ate in some of the best restaurants. I flew to people's wine estates. I tasted some of the most incredible wines in the world. Met some incredible winemakers, and it was just amazing, and it was just awesome. But by the end of my drinking career, and I call it a career because I did it for a long time and I was really good at it, by the end of it, there's nothing exciting about sitting with a bottle of $300 Burgundy, drinking it out of the bottle at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. There's nothing glamorous about that. But that's where I was. It was quantity over quality. That's how I had progressed. And I knew that something needed to change. And I just wasn't quite sure what it was. I knew I was an alcoholic. There was no question about it. I knew it. Because it goes back to that first drink. I knew something like this was going to happen. And sure enough, it did. And everybody knew it but me. And at the time, I met my wife at the restaurant that I used to work at in West Seattle, and we ended up getting married. And she drank socially, still does, and we partied. We worked really hard, and we played really hard as well. And that's just the way it was in the restaurant business. And we did that for a long time. Only I played, like you were saying, I played a lot longer and a lot harder than everybody else. And I worked with some career drinkers, right? And they're like, Scott, you need to take it down a notch. I didn't know what that meant because I wasn't done. And like you say, a lot of my friends are like, dude, you know what? We don't know where you're headed, but we got off a couple exits ago. We have no idea where you're going, but we want no part of it. And I didn't know any better. So I would just drink until I crashed and burned. And it got to the point, a point where I was carrying vodka with me in a little water bottle, that you get at Costco, the little water bottles. Only mine was full of vodka, and it was in my car all the time. Because even though I had a 12-minute commute from my wine shop where I was drinking all day back to West Seattle where I live, I couldn't go that long without some alcohol in my system. So I had a little bottle of vodka, straight vodka, mind you, in my cup holder. And I would just knock a couple hits back on the way home, and then I'd make a drink to celebrate me getting through another day. And it's hard work drinking wine all day, spending other people's money. And I'd wait for my wife to come home, and I'd make her a drink. So I would make myself a drink, her thinking it's my first one. And then we'd have dinner and split a bottle of wine, maybe open up another. And then she had to get up really early, so she would go to bed relatively early. Woohoo! Good night, hon. And I'd have 3, 4, 5, 7 more every night. That's just the way it was. So it got to the point where I was drinking vodka home, on my massive commute home. And one morning, there was a note on the counter from my wife, and it said, I bought a table, and I borrowed your car at an SUV, a big SUV. She said, I borrowed your car, so I left you the keys to my car. I didn't think about it. Oh, okay. And I got in her car and realized that I had no vodka. My second thought was, it's in my car, and my wife is in my car. And it was a warm day. And she loaded that table into my car. And she was thirsty. We know how this movie ends, don't we? Yeah. And sure enough, bigger in Dallas, she just took a big swig. And she was a bit upset. And she came home. And she said, I'm not swearing here, but she said, gee, Scott, what's going on? Only she didn't really say it that way. And that was the beginning of the end, because that's when I knew something had to change. Because I was putting on this act for so long, and it was getting really tiring. And she was really pissed off. And because she knew nothing. I was a great hider, like all of us are. I hid everything. And we'd go out to parties, and we'd come home, and she'd go, well, you know what, honey, you only had a couple drinks tonight. Thank you. Because, I said, honey, you know what? You go drink, have a good time. I'll drive. No problem. Well, while she's getting ready before we leave the house, I'm already having 3 or 4 drinks. Thank God she took a long time to get ready. So I go to the party, and then I had my 3 or 4. And then we'd come home, she'd go to bed, and I've had my 7 or 8 more, right? She thinks I have 2 or 3. She thinks I'm awesome. But I'm lying my ass off all day long, because that's what I do. So she's mad at me, and about a week later, I don't know what happened. To this day, I don't know what happened. I was sitting on my couch at 7:15 in the morning on my 3rd vodka tonic, because I needed 3 at that point in the morning just so I could keep my hands steady enough to shave. And I sat on my couch, and I'm looking at my drink, and I just had this feeling. And I just said to myself, I can't do this anymore. There wasn't a bolt from the heavens. The clouds didn't part. It was nothing like that. I just said, you know what? I'm done. I can't do this. And I let my wife know. and I let my parents know. And my mother-in-law is a internal medicine nurse, and she got on the horn with some people she knew, and we made some arrangements to get me into detox. So we did the next day. So I went to detox. I drove. I blew a .24 when I got there, after driving at 9:30 in the morning, mind you. And they said, well, Scott, you're going to have to go to detox. I said, okay. So I went to detox. Most people detox for about 3 or 4 days. And my detox was 11 days because I had 5 seizures and a heart attack while I was detoxing. And I don't remember a whole lot of it. I remember a lot of yelling and a lot of buzzers going off. And that's about it. They shocked me 4 times. They used enough juice that I think the street lights dimmed outside, right? I actually got a bill from City Light for that. Not really. And for about 1.5 years, I kid you not, about 1.5 years after that, being sober, every time I got in the shower and the water was a little too warm, I could feel my skin tingle right here, which is where they put one of the paddles. So it was just a reminder of what happened. I was dead for about 3 minutes. And that was the first time I was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous, because at my treatment center in Burien, they would have these people that would come in, kind of like the Lakeside Milam thing. They would come in and do a meeting. And I would sit there, and I'm early in sobriety, and I'm feeling horrible, and I'm shaking because it's the first time I've been without alcohol in 13 years. And these people would come in, and they would talk about God, and they would talk about their war stories. And I thought, man, if this is AA, I want no part of it. I wanted to go out and find a bus. Not to get on, but to jump in front of. Because I'm not drinking this Kool-Aid. I want nothing to do with these people. So that was the original AA experience. So I get out of there. My last day at rehab, my wife comes and picks me up, and she brings my sponsor, Patrick. And unbeknownst to me, my wife had talked to Patrick because I'd known him for 17 years. We worked at the same restaurant. He's got 5 more years sobriety than I do. My wife had talked to him and said, hey, Scott's in the hospital. I have no idea what the heck's going on. I don't know where to turn. I don't know what to do. All I know is he's getting out, and I'm afraid the same thing's going to happen again. So Patrick showed up with her and said, Scott, you can give your wife a kiss. And I did. And then he said, we're going to a meeting. So I got out of that treatment center at 2:30 in the afternoon, and I was at a meeting at 4:30, and I was at a meeting at 6, and I was at a meeting at 8. And Patrick said, I'm your sponsor. I didn't go find one. I didn't go, introduce myself or any of that. Patrick said, I'm your sponsor, and this is what's going to happen. Wow, all right. So they say do 90 meetings in 90 days. I did 134 meetings in 90 days because that's what I needed to do. Because detox and treatment got the monkey off my back. But guess what? The circus was still in town, right? I had to learn how to live without alcohol, and I didn't know if I could do it or not. So for the first time, I became willing to listen to somebody else who knew more about stuff than I did. And he said, this is what we're going to do. And we did it. And I knew that when that 4th step was going to come up, and even worse, that 5th step was going to come up, I knew that for the first time ever, I was going to have to be really, really honest about this thing that happened to me a long, long time ago, that I was keeping in here, that was just feeding on alcohol. And the monster was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I knew that I was going to have to address that, or else I would be right back to drinking. So that was the first time that I became willing to be absolutely, totally, completely, without a doubt, transparent and honest. So I did that 4th step, and I did that 5th step, and that 5th step was ugly. I was crying like a 6-year-old, but I got through it. And Patrick, my sponsor, is the only person on this planet that knows everything there is to know about me. And when I was done, he hugged me, and he said, guess what? The world didn't swallow you up now, did it? And I said, no. And he said, good, let's go get some ice cream. It sounds corny, but that's what we did. We went to the Husky Deli in West Seattle, and we got ice cream. I'm sitting there in the front window, crying like a 6-year-old girl, having a chocolate chip ice cream cone, thinking, you know what, I just bared my soul to this dude, and we're having ice cream, and I don't know what's going on. So, but here's what I did notice. It seemed like the weight of the world was lifted off of my shoulders. And because I did that, and because I immersed myself in this fellowship, I get to stay connected to a group of people who know what it's like to be me. And I don't get that with any other group of people that I'm with. Not my work, not my church folks, our social friends that aren't in the program. It's really difficult for people to understand us if you're not one of us, right? So what I do to stay connected is I surround myself with the right kind of people. And I stay in the middle of the herd because that's safe for me. And my first outside meeting after treatment was a meeting called Serenity Now in West Seattle. It was on Wednesday nights. And Patrick walks me in there. There must be, to me, there's like 3,000 people in there. There was about 75, 150 maybe. And he gets me by the shoulder, and we walk into the room, and he goes, hey, see all those people out there? And I said, yeah. And he said, all of those people can run your life better than you can. Oh. So you should listen to them. I said, oh, all right. So I raised my hand and said, hey, I'm new, and everybody clapped and all that. And I was with Patrick, and then he walked off to go talk to somebody, and I'm standing by myself, and I am terrified, and I have no idea what you people want from me, but I'm scared. I have no idea what's going on, and I'm just standing there, and I'm just looking around, and this guy comes up to me, and he was about 4 foot nothing, and about 117 years old, and he comes up, and he shakes my hand, and he says, don't worry, and he smiled. He said, it gets better. And I said, really? And he said, no. And I said, what? And he said, it gets different, and then it gets better. And those words just were sealed into my brain. I have not seen that guy since. Never. Not one meeting, not any. He just appeared from nowhere, said those choice words, and then disappeared into the night. But I remember it like it was yesterday. It gets different, then it gets better. And sure enough, that's what happened. So the long and the short of it is I became willing to be completely honest with everything. I did some things that were very difficult, but it allowed me to have a freedom today and a feeling that comes along with that. The feelings that I have today for my fellow man and for my family, for my wife, for my parents, for all of those, the feelings that I have today, I can't find those feelings in a bottle. I can't find those feelings on a street corner. Now, I'll just close with this. One of the things that was etched into my psyche about the benefits of staying connected to this program, I mentioned that my parents or my family is rather difficult to talk to. My dad is out building his empire, and my mom was very busy with her charity work, and that's the way it is. So fast forward, it's 5 years. I got almost 7 years sober now. My 5-year anniversary, I'm down in the Cayman Islands, which is where my parents live part of the year. And there's a lot of meetings down there, a lot of cool recovery down there. So I started going to a bunch of meetings, and they knew that I was going to get my 5-year coin. And in the manner that only they can do, my mother comes up and says, you're getting your 5-year coin. Is that right? And I said, yeah. Now, my parents have never, not once, asked me anything about my addiction, about my treatment, about AA, about nothing, because to do that would mean to pry, and we don't do that in my family. We don't want uncomfortable answers, so we don't do any of that. So my mom says, well, your father and I, if it's okay with you, if it's not an imposition, are other people allowed at these classes? I said, no, Mom, they're not classes, but yeah, in this case, yeah, everyone's available. Well, your father and I were talking, and we'd like to be there. And I said, sure. So I'm dumbfounded. So we go to this church down on the island, and we have in this meeting, and I've been there before, and it's a speaker meeting, kind of like this one. Well, and I'm there, and I'm introducing some folks, and they're sitting down, and the meeting chair comes up to me, and he goes, hey, our speaker didn't show up. You're kidding. And he said, we need you to speak. And I'm like, oh, no. So buckle up, Mom and Dad. This is going to be a rough one. So I kept it. I kept it manageable, and I got through it. And the coolest thing that I will forever remember is we got back to our house, and right before they went to bed, I'm sitting in the couch in the living room, and my father came out and said, I just wanted you to know how proud your mother and I are. And it felt magical. Because the degree of happiness that I got when I heard it was equal to the degree of difficulty it was for him to say. Does that make sense? And it was magical. And I cherished that day. And I told myself, I want to be there for 10. And I got 3.5 years to go. But I want to be there. And I wouldn't have been able to do any of that had it not been for this fellowship and everybody in it. And if they said, you can be completely happy without anybody in AA, and I would say, no thanks. I need all of you. You're my herd, right? A lot of people say, hey, I felt like the black sheep of my family all the time. And I say, good for you. Welcome to your flock. Because all of you people know what it's like to be me. And that means so much to me. And I couldn't have done it without each and every one of you. I don't know hardly any of you. I know a couple of people, but I need all of you. I need all of you in my life. Whether you know it or not, you all have done more to keep me sober today than you will ever know. And for that, I am grateful. Thank you for letting me share.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Sobercast is ad-free, and we'd like your help in order to keep it that way. So if you'd like to help us be self-supporting by pledging $1 or $2 a month, visit Sobercast.com and look for the donate links. Thank you very much.